You're tapped into Japan Journal with Mal Adams, the internet's #1 weekly English-language online cybercast from Japan, streaming on GNN, a division of Totown Communications Company Limited, Japan.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to another edition of Japan Journal. I'm your host, Mal Adams, coming to you from the beautiful countryside of Japan. For nearly 50 years, I've lived in self-imposed exile, building a life far away from the land my ancestors once called home. But as we approach a crucial moment in history, I feel the weight of my roots pulling me back. You see, the fight for freedom, justice, and equality that shaped our people still rages on, whether you're in the United States or living abroad like me. This week, we delve into the importance of the 2024 presidential election, a fight that pits Kamala Harris against Donald Trump. But this isn't just a political contest. This is a battle for the very soul of democracy. Our ancestors fought and died for a right to vote, to live free, and to have a say in shaping our nation's future. And now it's our turn to pick up the mantle. No matter where you reside, whether you're in America or part of the Black diaspora living abroad, this election is about our voice. Our ancestors forced America to live up to her promise, and we must do it again. Let me take you on a journey through our history to remind us all why our vote is not just a right, but a responsibility to our ancestors, to ourselves, and to future generations. From the time the first African slaves were brought to American shores in 1619, we've been denied our fundamental human rights, stripped of our identities, our languages, and our cultures. We were treated as property, not people, but even in bondage, the spirit of resistance never died. And from those early days, voices rose up against the horrors of slavery. Frederick Douglass, an enslaved man who freed himself, was one of the first to lead the charge. His words lit a fire in the hearts of Black and white Americans alike, reminding this country of the promise it had made in its Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal. Douglass knew that the fight for Black liberation was intertwined with the fight for America's soul. And in the following years, the Civil War, we saw the fruits of that struggle in the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment, which finally abolished slavery, but freedom from bondage was only the first step. Next came the long, arduous battle for political freedom, the right to vote. During the Reconstruction era, Black men were briefly granted the right to vote, hold office, and participate in the democratic process. But that victory was short-lived. The rise of Jim Crow laws and racial violence in the South stripped Black Americans of their hard-earned rights. Voting became a near impossible task in many states, with literacy tests, poll taxes, and outright intimidation keeping us from the polls. But we did not give up. Leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois and Ida B. Wells carried the torch through the darkest times, while organizations like the NAACP continued to fight for justice. And then, in the mid-20th century, a new generation of leaders took the stage. Martin Luther King Jr., whose voice still echoes in our hearts today, led the civil rights movement, demanding an end to segregation and voter suppression. His powerful sermons, marches, and peaceful protests forced America to reckon with her hypocrisy once again. The blood spilled on the streets of Selma in 1965 made the injustice undeniable, and out of that struggle came the Voting Rights Act, a law that finally began to make good on the promise of democracy for Black Americans. Since the passage of the Voting Rights Act, there have been constant efforts to roll back our gains. Voter ID laws, gerrymandering, the purging of voter rolls are all tactics used to suppress the Black vote. But let me remind you, my brothers and sisters, that we have always been the ones to push America forward, to demand that she lives up to her ideas, and in 2024, we must do it again. Kamala Harris stands on the shoulders of those who came before her. Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Malcolm X, and Fannie Lou Hamer. Her candidacy represents the hopes and dreams of generations of Black people who fought for freedom and equality. But she cannot win the fight alone. We must stand with her. We must vote. My friends, as I speak to you from the peaceful countryside of Japan, I remember the struggles that shaped our people's history. My African ancestors were brought to America in chains, but I flew to Japan on a plane by choice, seeking a better life. Yet no matter where I live, I know that my fate, like yours, is tied to the land our ancestors bled and died for. The promise of democracy, freedom, and justice for all is at stake in this election. This is not just about politics. It's about the soul of America. We, the descendants of enslaved Africans, have always been the ones to hold this country to its ideals. From the days of Frederick Douglass to the marches of Martin Luther King Jr., we have forced America to be better, to live up to her promise. Now it is our time to act. The sacrifices of our ancestors must not be in vain. Wherever you are, whether in the United States or the diaspora, your vote matters. It is our responsibility to show up, to speak out, and to save America from herself once again. So I urge you, with all the love and strength of our shared history, to vote in the upcoming election. Let our voices be heard. Let our power be felt. Together, we can continue the fight for freedom, justice, and equality. Get out the vote. Our future depends upon it. I'm your brother Malcolm Adams, reminding you that Black votes matter, now more than ever. Thank you very much for listening, and may peace, justice, and freedom guide us all. This is Brother Mal in Japan on Japan Journal, bidding you sayonara.
You're tapped into Japan Journal with Mal Adams, the internet's #1 weekly English language online cybercast from Japan, streaming on GNN, a division of Totown Communications Company Limited, Japan.